Good afternoon, everyone. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And we will start, since we have some new faces in the crowd, we'll start with introductions. And we'll start with our host. No, we're not. We're sorry. We'll wait for you. All right.
I'm Brett Laughlin, Managing Director, Iowa County Road Commission.
Russ Desai with the MACC Authority Board.
Ken DeWeert from Fillmore Township.
Jim Story, Allegan County Board of Commissioners.
John Kleinexel, Allegan County Road.
Jerry Huntsberger, Park Township.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission.
Anders Myers of the MACC.
Tim Berkman with the MACC.
David Vangenhoven with the MACC.
Don Nail with MDOT statewide planning.
Linda Howell, Lakeville Township.
Tyler Patton, MDOT records. Robert Blank, Crystal New Zealand. Jared Meantime, Collin Township. Joe Allen, Iowa County Board of Commissioners.
All right, and staff, if you would, please.
Carolyn Olsted with the MACC.
I'm Craig Atwood from the Allegan County Road Commission.
Rob Vink with the MACC.
Judy Bishop from the MACC. Mara Yerke with the MACC.
Kelly Goward with the MACC.
Arpan Lobo from the Holland Sentinel.
All right, thank you. Thank you for being here. I know we almost all know each other, but a few new faces. So, Craig, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And, of course, Brett, thank you for being here. After this meeting, we will have, there is a MACC holding, and we'll get to that a little bit, but I know you set aside a separate room for that. So, at the conclusion, there is a MACC holding company. Okay, you have the copy of the minutes, and if you're ready, I would take a motion.
Looking for a motion?
Yes, sir.
You have one. Accept the minutes you presented.
Thank you, Jerry.
Support.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any public comment? Okay. I think we move right into road funding presentation. Do you have any introductory comments?
No, but I know this is a subject that's come up often, and so very thankful that Brett was willing to come and make his presentation to us here. It's a subject that's catching, of course, a lot of attention, especially these days, but Craig is also here to answer any questions on behalf of the Allegan County Road Commission. But Brett, take it away.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me. Again, I'm Brett Laughlin, Managing Director, Ottawa County Road Commission. So I've done this presentation a few times, so I know there's been a little buzz about it. But so it's really an educational piece about the road funding that's in place now and where does it go. And then it was precipitated by the governor's proposal during her campaign and after her campaign. I have a little information about that as well. So I'll get started. So there are basically three entities in Michigan that have public roads that rely on funding for maintenance and improvements. You have MDOT, you have 531 cities and villages, and then there's 83 county road commissions. Then you can see if you break it down by centerline miles, you can see the percentage that kind of attributed to the respective jurisdictions. And that kind of becomes important later on during my presentation. Two main components that these agencies rely on is what's called the Highway Trust Fund. There's a tax that goes at the pump from the federal side. So the Highway Trust Fund is typically federal aid money. And then the Michigan Transportation Fund, which is a Public Act 51. I'll explain this stuff in a little minute. But those are the two sources that come from the gas tax and other revenues that both agencies rely on. The Highway Trust Fund, as I explained, is from the federal side of the gas tax and some other taxes. And when that comes back to Michigan, 75% of that is diverted to MDOT to use on their system, and then 25% of that is a competitive process. Typically it goes to the MPO like the MACC for the cities, villages, and all the road, county road agencies. There's other components that go to some transit and all that, but this is kind of the general rule of thumb for that. I would say, though, for years, Michigan was what we call a donor state, meaning every dollar that comes from the gas tax that goes to the feds, we didn't get a dollar back. We were always around 85, 90%. Well, now I think we're up to 105%, so we're getting some return from the feds back in this program. The Michigan Transportation Fund, again, that was established back in 1951, and its percentage is statutory, and it's 39.1% goes to MDOT, 39.1% goes to the county road agencies, and then the 21.8% goes to the cities and villages. So the big component of the Michigan Transportation Fund is what goes in the gas tax. Of course, that was the big buzz a few years ago before the legislators took action, but here's kind of the historical review of that. From my records, I saw the 1925, looks like 2 cents was converted in some type of fund that was respective to the Michigan Transportation Fund. And it really didn't get increased until 2017 with the big 2015 gas tax and $1.2 billion budget approval for road improvements. And 17 is when it got incremented to 26.3. On the federal side, 1997 is the last time we've seen an increase on that, and that's right now at 18.3. Diesel, kind of the same scenario. Now we have parity with the regular gas and diesel based on that legislation in 2015. And again, it hasn't changed since 97 on the federal side. So here's the cost at the pump. Right now, this is based on $2.75. I know that can fluctuate up and down based on the day. The only thing that will change is the 6% sales tax. Everything else will always be the same. So off the top, you have whatever the product cost is. That's what can fluctuate. Then you have the next 3 categories are really environmental fees, underground storage tanks that we're still paying on through Michigan. Then also you have the federal side of 2 components of environmental tax. Then you got the federal excise tax. So that gets added on first before the Michigan taxes. So you have a subtotal. Then you have the 6% sales tax. And now you have the 26.3 cents per gallon, which makes up the $2.75 a gallon if that's what the cost is at the pump. But really, if you go to the pump and there's a difference in there, the only thing that's going to change on that column is the product cost and the sales tax cost. Everything else is fixed per gallon. This is kind of a surprise. Let me go back to that. So I have $2.75, 61 cents is total tax. If that makes sense to everybody. So if you keep 61 cents, where does that all go? Well, only 39.1% of that actually goes to roads. We have other programs. You got transit gets 5.8%. We got schools gets 13.4%, and that's primarily from the sales tax component. And then those other environmental fees that I talked about break up that. Of that 31.1, the MTF gets 23.7, so that gets dispersed automatically to all the agencies based on the formula. And then 15.4 goes to the Highway Trust Fund. That's federal aid, so MDOT will get their share that they got to dictate what roads they're going to do on, then it goes into the pot that the MPOs would administer on behalf of the county road agencies and cities and villages. So the last big increase was back in 2015. It was in 2 components. You had your $600 million that came from the gas and registration fees increases, which is now fully implemented. And then the next component was the $600 million that would be dedicated from general fund in 3 years. So 19 was the first year of that. That was $150 million. Legislators did act on that, and that was dispersed out. This upcoming fiscal year 20 is $325 million, and I'm hearing that will go through. I have not heard that will not go through, and I think that's been all the talks of all the budget, and that's been the case. And then in 21 will be the full amount of $600 million. Now, while it takes legislative action each year through the budget process to implement all that, it would take legislators to say not to implement that through another law, which could be another Detroit school issue, it could be the Flint water crisis. Another issue could jeopardize that through some type of legislative action. So that's not really per se guaranteed. Something could happen to reduce that in the future should a need arise. So I just wanted to look at, right now all I have is the 18 data because 19 is still going on, but just to show you where if you can do the Michigan tax side and the federal tax side and how that's dispersed through the agencies. So in 18 for the MTF and Highway Trust Fund, you can see the gasoline, diesel, and all these alternate fuels based on their respective taxes. Almost $2.5 billion was generated here in Michigan through those taxing levies. If we look at the MTF, you got the receipts from the gas and diesel. It's about 1.4, a little over that. Again, registration fees, there's a component for registration fees to go to this. That's almost a 1.4 as well. So they're about 50-50 of the Michigan Transportation Fund revenues. But just like every pot of money in the state coffers, there's always some deductions for various reasons. You got administration fees, you have other programs that you have to consider. We're also paying on debt service that, through the Engler area, that's still going on. Then we have less other programs that maybe get reverted back to some of these agencies. You have local bridge program, wetland banks, but really there's a total of $2.4 billion that went into the Michigan Transportation Fund as of 2018. Again, that was dispersed through that formula that we talked about earlier. That's through that Public Act of 1951, 39.1% to the MDOT, 39.1% to the county road agencies, and then 21% to the cities and villages. And I have a little there that those totals still be adjusted later on before they're actually dispersed to the local agencies, but that's the general amount that we kind of look at. If you look at the federal side of this, again, the Highway Trust Fund, what was collected in Michigan in 2018 was a little over $1 billion, $1,050 million. You can see that we got about $75 million extra in return, so we were finally a recipient of getting more money in from the federal side instead of being a donor state. Again, the disbursements that I talked about, MDOT gets 75% of that they use for their programs and their improvements. The other 25% goes through a competitive process through the MPOs and some other programs for the county road agencies and cities and villages. Now, if we look at combining both funding sources, the federal and the state, I had to take the federal side for the cities and villages. All I did is divide it in half. I didn't have a way to look up to see how much the county road agencies got and how much the cities and villages got. I just did it in half, and I would think that it's probably going to be somewhat closer than that because you're looking at urban areas. You got a lot of cities and villages that are primarily in urban areas, and then the counties have urban and rural. So for this scenario, all I did is look at half of that, 25% of the federal side, and I split it between the two respective agencies. So you can see that now with the funding opportunities, MDOT gets about 50% of the funding that comes from the federal gas tax and the MTF. And then county road agencies get about 31%, and cities and villages about 19%. So the County Road Association, based on all this data, all the new revenue coming in, $1.2 billion was talked about for probably 7 years prior to them actually implementing the $1.2 billion. So they were already behind the game on what the actual number was. But once the legislators got that number, that's all the information they had. They just kept with that. They knew that was probably not going to be enough money. Well, the County Road Association just did a big report on behalf of the 83 county road agencies, and our necessary income is an additional $2 billion to get all the roads back up into condition. That's based on the revenues we already have. That's revenues from the Michigan Transportation Fund, any federal aid we get, county road millages, if agencies have those, township contributions, just the funding sources they have, there's still a deficit of $2 billion. And that's just the county road agencies. I don't know if MML has done one for the cities and villages, but if you look at it percentage-wise, I would say they're probably underfunded. And we all know that MDOT has made similar statements of a number like this for their system. So there still is a big need if we're ever going to keep up on maintaining the public roads in Michigan. This was a slogan of the governor before she got elected, and I think she's still kind of saying it. It's kind of softened down. So this next part is if the proposal that the governor made, which really hasn't taken any momentum with the legislators, but really is the only thing out there. Legislators haven't come in and maybe made a counter or another proposal on how to fund the roads. So all we have right now is to present on this and to see if somebody will take this and modify it to suit everybody's needs. So the proposed revenue from the governor's program, and I'm calling it Fix Michigan Roads Plan, I think that's what MDOT has called it as well, is they wanted to increase, or she wanted to increase the gas tax in Michigan by 45 cents over a 3-period time, not 3 years, but in 3 periods. But by 2021, when this was proposed, that would be fully implemented. I don't think 45 cents is ever going to fly through the legislator, and I don't think it's ever going to fly through the public. But this is what the proposal was, and I'll show you what that potential revenue could generate. One thing that was also proposed is we talked about the $600 million of the last $1.2 billion road funding plan that comes from the state general fund that has to take legislative action. That would go away. This program would supplement that, and it would fill in that portion of that revenue. So you can see if you get the gasoline, diesel, and alternative fuels, you generate, based on the data that we have, about $2.5 billion in revenue for that. Then they would take the MTF disbursements, and this is based on 20. They would take away the general fund and give it back to the MTF. So a portion of this would go into the MTF to cover that $600 million commitment, we'll say, from the general fund, from the $1.2 billion road funding package. Then there's also a DNR recreation plan that they wanted to take some deductions off of this as well. It's $42 million. It is a sizable amount, but minor compared to the $2.5 billion plan. This was the distribution formula, and here's where I think a lot of my colleagues have our eyes raised. The governor was proposing this based on the classification of roads. So all MDOT roads would be eligible, and they would get 70% of the funding. And this would not go through the Michigan Transportation Funding formula or the Highway Trust Fund. It's a separate funding plan, separate formula. It's just a proposal, so it's not been acted on. Then 23% would be dispersed to the road commissions and cities and villages based on classification. And then there would be 7% that would go to a local bridge program and transit needs. That's kind of the breakdown of how the money would be dispersed on this particular plan. If you look at 21, what the road revenue would be, you can see that MDOT, if you include this new governor's plan at the bottom, would be $3.5 billion. Now they would jump up to 58% of the funding of the now 3 funding sources. The county road agencies would further decline to 26%, and the cities and villages, they still stay about the same if you look at respect to the prior funding and their mileages. Again, this is just one proposal out there. We're waiting for reaction because legislators I presented this to them. They're aware of that, so we'll just have to wait and see. So we're just kind of saying where everybody's saying we need more road funding. It's just how you're going to distribute that in an equitable way. We think there's a little inequity in the proposed plan, so we think there's a way to kind of look at that. I think myself and even my colleague over here would say the Act 51 formula seems to be working well, and maybe that's something that could be considered to throw that money in there. If that is the case, then you could kind of see, at least from our perspective, the 2 county road agencies in this area. If you went through Act 51 formula, and now this is just the revenue from the governor's plan, we would generate, Allegan County would get about $9.6 million additional in the revenues that they already have, and Ottawa County would get almost $19 million in additional revenues above what we already have. If you go through the governor's formula, while we would still get more revenue, you can see that Allegan County would only get 2.3 or 3.3, but that's a little bit of a decrease from what they could get if they went through the Act 51 formula. Likewise, Ottawa County would only get about 4.5 versus what we could get if it went through the Act 51 formula. I did something similar for the cities and villages. I kind of had to do some interpolation, so that's a little disclaimer on there. We know what our revenues would be based on, with the help of the County Road Association. I reached out to MML, they didn't really have the data, so I just kind of did some projections, but I think we should be in the ballpark based on what I'm seeing. So again, if you look at the respective cities and villages within this area, you can see that all of them would be more revenue through Act 51. While they still would get more revenue what they have, there would be less revenue if you went through the governor's proposed plan. So now we got questions. I probably confused you thoroughly, and I'll do the best I can to answer any questions that you may have. And I can even go back to a slide or two if that helps with the questions.
Let me ask a question for clarification, Brent. When you talked about the local road needs, you said $2 billion more is needed in order to bring the local road system back up into a state of good repair. That was used based on 2018 numbers, I think you said. So if the legislature comes out with the $600 million next year that they've pledged, we'd be 1/4 of the way there compared to your baseline. Nope.
No, because that was factored in, that 600 million was already factored into that component, and that was done this recently in the last few months based on revenues that we know are coming in and pledged per se. So we're still, at least the county road agencies are still $2 billion shy in meeting needs and expectations.
And the assumption is that MDOT is in a similar underfunded situation where they're going to need gross amounts of additional revenue to accomplish their
I
goals.
don't want to throw Tyler them under the spot, but I heard 2.1 billion was about a number on MDOT side.
It's around that number, yes, for $600 million to offset what you've taken out on general funds from the 2015 package, and whatever's left over is used through the proposed funding formula. But the one thing I guess I'm unclear of what that formula, just a question real quick too, is it replacing Act 51 or is it an add-on to Act 51?
It's a separate add-on.
Yes.
So Act 51 stays where it is, the money that going in, except for this $600 million in general fund that goes into the Michigan Transportation Fund. This new governor's plan would be dispersed separately.
All the new revenue goes through that.
With that, well, this proposed formula is right now.
As proposed.
That money that was mandated, that you said they were gonna take out if that was, if this passed, would that just go into the state general fund then, that money that was originally mandated?
No, well, if you look at number 2, that's the 600 million that comes from the 3-year general fund disbursements. They did it over 3 years to get to 600 million. The governor's plan, which is it's just a proposal. It's not going in. I mean, no one's acted on that or countered or anything. If it were to materialize, the general fund would no longer put money into the Michigan Transportation Fund. They would take, though, from whatever's generated from the governor's plan, they would put in 600 million of that off the top into this to be dispersed through the Michigan Transportation Formula. So MDOT would get their percentage, the road agencies would get their percentage, and the cities and villages would get their. So they wanted to make the $1.2 billion package of 2015 whole, per se, and they wanted to eliminate general fund money going in there.
And that's that one that was passed in 1951 or whatever it was.
Formula is from 51, right? Yes.
It's been amended like
Well,
100 times.
yeah.
I just heard on the way down here that the budget will be on her desk by Thursday. Does it have anything in that budget for roads?
The last I heard, and if you heard anything different, is road funding is not part of the budget this year. You guys heard anything different on that? No? So.
Did the CRA's legislative update say maybe they're looking at like a 500 million one time again this year? Who knows till you see it?
So they're just pushing it down the road again, huh?
Yeah, well, they're kind of under the gun. So, October 1st, you got a lot of state agencies that rely on the budget to be passed or they're shut down. So many times they'll pass a budget month to month to keep programs going, but it sounds like they might just adopt a budget but not discuss roads at this time.
Do you think the main obstacle is the distribution, or is it the tax increase itself?
The new plan? I think both will be an obstacle. I don't, personally, I don't think 45 cents is ever gonna fly through the legislators, or, you know, because voters are gonna have a perspective on that. I think there's a mentality about double digits. If it was 9 point something cents, I think people say, oh, that's not bad, that's fine, even if that was done over a multi-year period. But just to come out with 45 cents right away, I think that's something the legislators probably aren't going to palate, and I don't think you know, our constituents here in Michigan are going to palate. So I think they got to come up with a creative way to fund the roads properly, and maybe that's a multi-year increase plan.
So Brent, the real bottom line, we could really only expect the 325 and the 600 as of today.
Yes.
And that even has some,
Above, we got the 600
above,
million.
yes, yeah.
Yes.
But that even has some potential to disappear.
They'd have to take action on that.
I just wanted to clarify that.
It's not constitutionally protected.
So they would have to take a session, they'd have to take a vote, and they would have to say, we're going to take away the general fund commitment for whatever reason. So I'm thinking it had to be something big. But that could happen. We've had a history of big items happening here in Michigan, so.
Two questions for you to comment on. This existing plan that came out in 2015 was an attempt to start correcting the problem. Assuming it's fully funded in 2021 with the full additional $600 million, will that be enough to solve the problem? And I know the answer is no, but can you tell us what percentage of the problem you think, what will that $1.2 billion in additional money do for the roads of Michigan? And then the next question tied to that is, we have heard opposition to giving more money to the roads from people who say, well, it'll just be wasted. There won't be anybody to build it. It would just drive the prices of contractors through the roof, and we'll never be able to assimilate that much more money efficiently.
Well, the first part is county road agencies would need $2 billion. That's the number above and beyond all revenues that are coming in today. Cities and villages are probably something comparable. I know MDOT is something comparable. So for all intents and purposes, you're talking $6 billion more about what's being generated right now. You know, I already showed you that this is where the money is going. I'm not suggesting that you do anything different, but sales tax goes to schools. If sales tax went to roads, there's a big component that could go to the roads. But what are you going to do about schools then? That's the dilemma with.
Was part of Proposal A. I think that's constitutional. I think that was voted on by the people. So you can't just change it without a vote. That's not statutory. I think that's constitutional, if I recall correctly.
But they could propose that if they wanted to. But then they're leaving the hole for the schools. They'd have to have a way to make them whole, per se, through some other mechanism.
I guess just to clarify my question, with the current funding solutions that hopefully will be there in 2021 and not disappear, what will the net effect be? Will we be able to improve the conditions of the roads overall, or will we simply be able to keep them from deteriorating further?
I can only comment on our system, and I'd say that with the new revenue, we're slowing that deterioration curve. Before, like in 2005, our condition of roads were probably 6% in poor. Well, in 2017, I think we were up to 30%. And now we're like at 29, 28, so that deterioration curve has kind of slowed down. And that's because we're doing what we call mixes of fixes. Instead of just resurfacing all the time, you're doing a lot more preventative maintenance. You see more crack sealing in our county, chip sealing, cape sealing surfaces. So you're trying to catch roads before they deteriorate to a point where all you can do is reconstruct. But you only can do that for so long. Eventually, you're going to have to do something on the road other than throwing, preventive maintenance treatments on top of preventive maintenance treatments. So we've slowed it down, but it's only going to continue to get worse unless there's a mechanism to keep up with the mix of fixes, including more resurfacing and more reconstructive efforts. Craig, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, he had kind of a second part of this question about maybe getting into the demand and how much the contractors can handle, and I think we're seeing that the last couple of years. You know, the paving industry, for one, is just, I mean, I think they're just overwhelmed with how much work is out there. We've seen prices go up significantly. We had about a 20% increase this year compared to last year. But I think they're also looking for something sustainable. If they know the money's going to be there and it's coming in, they should staff up for it. Now, that's a challenge right now, especially in this area with low unemployment rates, finding qualified, skilled labor to do that type of work. So it's just, the quicker you throw the money at it, it kind of makes more problems. You know, if you can spread it out, a gradual increase, and then keep it sustained, the industry will follow suit, I think.
Thanks. I'd like to switch gears just a little bit, since the governor put on the table introducing a new formula for distribution. You know, both Allegan and Ottawa County residents have voted to tax themselves significantly to support our two road commissions. Has there ever been any discussion about rewarding those counties that have this kind of effort? Because my understanding is not all counties do that.
I know that Ottawa County Senator Victory, if he hasn't proposed anything, but that is something that he would like to counter with, is if agencies or communities have some skin in the game, I think is the way he said. He'd like to see more road funding go to those agencies who are putting effort through their constituents, because they want to have better roads.
Kind of like a match program per se, where if you raise more money locally, you'll get more back from the state. To be pursued.
So what message, Brett, would you, to the County Road Association, like for us, local government units, to convey to our legislators?
Well, I think the message has been out there in the media. There's a need for more road funding. It's just a matter of how that's dispersed. We're not in favor of this formula. We'd like to see something maybe more in line to Act 51, but maybe there's something else out there that could fit everybody's needs, and that's kind of the message we have. You know, we're Ottawa County residents are paying in this. They're going to pay 45 cents more under this plan. You would think you'd get some more return back to our area, and under this current distribution formula, that probably would not be the case.
You know, some of us, a week ago, there was a governmental affairs breakfast, which is a monthly thing. Some of us were there. And you kind of get the impression from these individuals that they've got this under control, and that it isn't. I don't know if they get it. I think they do, but they just don't seem to be in tune with the urgency, from my opinion, anyway.
Honest?
In the late 1970s, instead of a gas tax increase, the state of Michigan issued so-called transportation performance bonds. Has that alternative been examined? And if so, why isn't it being discussed and adopted?
Well, we're still paying on bonds from previous years. I don't know about that particular one, but in the Engler area, we're still paying $50 million. That's off the top from everybody, MDOT, the road commissions, and the cities and villages on the MTF. There's a portion taken out to pay off that deficit, which is still not paid off.
One argument, I think, in favor of selling bonds is the fact that there is a sunset, meaning at some point they're paid off. With a gas tax increase, once you impose it, it stays forever.
I don't have a lot of information on that, what that would generate, and the economics, so I can't really give you a good comment on that, other than the previous bonding efforts we're still paying on. And those roads have probably been deteriorated twice from the revenue that was generated back in the 80s for that.
And it's kind of kicking the can down the road on this, in my opinion, because aren't we still paying on the Grand Home Build Michigan? And didn't Snyder also issue bonds, Build Michigan 2 or whatever? Aren't we still paying on those bonds?
Yeah.
That's part of why we don't have the money we need today, right?
Yep.
It solves the problem for the short term, but not for the long term.
There's a legitimate debate on this question, but it just seems to me that that's an alternative to a gas tax increase.
The money to pay those bonds, where does that come from? Does that come out of the gas tax, or does that come out of the general fund to repay those bonds?
$50 million comes off the Michigan Transportation Fund right now. I don't know if the state puts more money in than that. Do you know that?
I don't know that, I just, yeah, the 50 million a year has been going on for a long, long, long time. And that's hurting all of us, not just MDOT, that's the locals too are getting, you know, we're essentially paying a portion of that. And I'm sure, like Brett said, those roads have long been deteriorated that were built back in the 80s.
I think we have two, Linda and then Nancy. Yeah, Linda.
You said that in all, it's about $6 billion more to get the roads back up to a decent standard.
That's just, I'm just guessing what the cities would be, and I'm taking a stab at what MDOT would be.
If somehow that came to pass and we had enough people to do the work, what's the ongoing maintenance cost that we need to plan for above and beyond?
That the road commission figured $2 billion would take care of the roads and keep them in good condition. Yes.
It just seems like Roger's plan has a lot of wisdom to it, because otherwise, why would you want to get ahead of the road problem if you can just let the thing unravel and all of a sudden the state's going to bail you out? And it de-incentivizes all the governments that step forward to be responsible for their roads. And I would really hate for them to walk away from Act 51, which has kept us all playing in the sandbox nicely, in order to just say,
Well, yeah, Act 51 would remain. They're not saying they're going to take that away. It's just they'd have this other. It'd be nice if it was kind of in there. Everybody knows how that program works. The same percentages would go in, and that would just have to be something to be talked about with the legislators. Should we start to hear some momentum about some type of road funding plan that coming forward?
well, it seems like it started in 51 and had 100 revisions, and now all of a sudden we're going to reinvent the wheel and come up with this brand new formula, and that's just going to have a whole bunch of 100 disasters besides, so thank you.
Jerry?
Is anybody talking about what the electric car future, General Motors, Mary Barra is focusing in 35 years, everything's going to be electric. How's that going to impact all this?
That is concern but they're taking that component into the registration fee side, and I haven't seen the data to how much electric cars are registered in Michigan and what the difference is between an electric car and a gas car, and then take the gas tax side.
That's where they'll get the monies for registration, because obviously they're not going to be buying gas.
Yeah, some of that was built into the 2015 funding package. The registration fees for hybrid or alternative fuel vehicles went up significantly more than gas did.
Okay.
So they did take that into account. Some there. I don't know if it was a wash for what they would save in fuel taxes or not.
Brett, you have done a really nice job. I appreciate your being here. Dan and Tyler, I'm going to ask you guys to comment in just a minute, so be ready, okay? Craig, thank you for being here. Do you have any? Yeah, there might be a couple more questions, but Craig, do you have anything you want to add to what's been said?
No, I think Brett covered it really well.
Could we have a copy of those? Could you email those to MACC so they could forward them to us?
This is on there, so can you take care of that?
We got it, so we can distribute it.
Could you do that, please? Be helpful.
I do have one last question. What do you think the outcome might be? If you had a crystal ball, where do you think this is going?
I'd be a billionaire if I knew a crystal ball what legislators would do, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't be here today.
I think there's going to be talks next year. Like I said, I think it's going to have to be a single-digit proposal to start the ball rolling. That's just my personal feeling.
So nothing this fall.
No, I think because they want to keep all the other programs and get a budget through, I think it's a little too late. I mean, we never know what lame duck will do, but I don't see that coming forward.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say there'd be a one-time appropriation again for whatever dollar amount they can come up with. Hopefully they keep discussing it.
It's really unfortunate they can't get something done. We're very fortunate we have someone like you here to give us this information and to manage Ottawa County. So thank you, Brett. Appreciate your efforts a lot.
Right. And anybody's got any other questions, just feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. I'll try to answer them for you. So,
While we're on the topic, Tyler, Dan, you want to add anything to the comments or to give us an update on MDOT?
Regarding this or anything? Well, I think we're starting with the US I-196 business loop at 112 intersection down there, down between Neal and Holland. I think that project's starting up. I don't have a lot of information on that, but I should be hearing up here if it hasn't already.
That's going through all the way through Zealand, correct?
I don't know if it's going that far. I think it's just at the intersection. They're kind of going out a couple hundred feet to build those indirect Michigan left turn.
I thought they were doing crack sealing.
They may, yeah.
On Chicago Drive.
You're right. Or
All
joint.
the way through Zealand.
I believe those are joint replacements. There's two projects.
One lane will be closed down for a couple of months.
I'm not sure about that.
That's what we got, the information we got.
It could possibly. There are two projects going on. So thank you for correcting me on that.
No,
I guess they're all on the same stretch of road. They're just, in my mind, two separate. Dan, anything you're in?
Dan, sorry.
But, no, I don't really have any updates on anything.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for being here, both of you. Carolyn? You're up.
Short and sweet because I know we have a rather packed agenda today. So first up from me, we have a memo that has a list of projects. These are roads that are predicted to need capacity changes based on future population growth that we expect in the next 25 years. So this list of projects we brought to Tech this month, and they approved it to bring it here to policy. These projects are needed to be put into the state's travel demand model for the MACC region, which would then go into our long-range plan. So pretty simple. A lot of these projects, oftentimes if you see it from an even number to an odd, that usually means that it's a center left turn lane throughout the project. If it's odd to odd, you're probably adding an extra travel lane. So 3 to 5, for instance, you're probably going from a middle turn lane already, but you're adding 2 more on. So you have 2 lanes capacity. So that's kind of how that reads. Again, these are just roads that we're predicting in the next 25 years might need expansion in populous areas. And some of the dates that you see that they could be open are included. So some might go out to the year 2045 even. So we're just looking for a vote on this so we can add it to the travel demand model to see how that affects congestion in our area in the future or helps alleviate it and have it in the plan.
Ask one question, Carolyn, real quick, if you don't mind. I think at the tech meeting we had everything between your base year, the model, up until current. Is that inherently already included, which is completed at this point?
Yeah, anything that's in the base model, this is just anything new being added in, except we did not put, there are 3 state jobs that have already been completed that you brought to us that were completed in 18, 17, something like that. So this is just local jobs that are future predicted. Yep.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Okay, you're looking for a motion, Carolyn? All right.
I'll move we approve the inclusion of these projects in the 2045 plan.
Thank you. That was Terry. Okay. Any further questions, comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And Carolyn, you're starting a book. chapters 1 through
I'm
3?
starting a book, yes. Included in your packet are the first 3 chapters of the 2045 Draft Long-Range Transportation Plan. And it's our plan to bring to you 3 to 5 chapters every month until it's completed. The final vote, I think we talked about this a little bit last month, we're expecting with the timeline of the 2045 plan, the final vote would be in February, at the February meeting. So we're going to spend this fall completing those chapters, and just so we don't pile it on all at once at the end, we're just planning on giving you a few at a time as we complete them. And if you do have any comments, please feel free to email me those comments, and I will help address those and update the chapters as needed. Yeah. We already had some great comments from MDOT that we included, so this will, if you did get it in the tech packet, this has been updated a little bit with MDOT's comments in the past couple weeks. And no action is needed for this.
Carolyn, thank you. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it. Okay, Rob.
Thank you. All right, well, I'm not writing a book, so if you look in your packets, you do have a memo here for some watershed updates. This one here regarding the new grant coming to us by way of the Great Lakes Commission. This is funded through the Great Lakes Sediment and Nutrient Reduction Program through the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. So $190,000 in grant funds coming our way, with $67,000 in match by way of Project Clarity and some of the producers we'll be working with. And the proposed practices around 1,450 acres of cover crops and nearly 4,000 linear feet of grassed waterway. So we were already able to get about 1,000 acres of the cover crops committed to secure this grant. And we did expand our area that we're working in a little bit. Peters Creek, Upper Macatawa River, and Nordlos Creek is the new one. This is part of Holland Township on the north side of the watershed, and South Branch. And our goals are to reduce 800 tons of sediment, 1,200 pounds of phosphorus, and continue to report on the grant, as well as have some field days, workshops, and different outreach activities. One of those activities we did talk about at the last meeting was the 2019 Cultivating Resilience Field Day. This was at Smoligan Farms in Zeeland Township, and I think, Glenn, you joined us for a little bit there. But we did have about 130 people attend, so very well attended. We thought if we had 100, we'd be in good shape, and I think we planned on food for less than 130, but everybody was fed, so. A couple pictures. Christina Curell was one of our speakers from MSU Extension, Michigan State University Extension, talking about cover crops and no-till, soil health, and just a few pictures from what we had going on there. So we did have some help. Tim was there, Mara was there. I think everybody in, almost the whole staff was in attendance, so it's a great day. Any questions, comments? Yes, Nancy.
Just this question, I see where the match comes from, our portion versus Project Clarity. Do we get any offset money, revenue, to cover staff time or whatever out of this grant?
So there's some staff time in there. Kelly, do you remember how much exactly? It was unfortunately one of the items that when we went through the process, they asked us to trim back on, which just kind of goes back to that point about grants often fund, in the ground improvements, but don't really cover staff time. And so that was part of our conversation when we had the discussion about increasing the watershed dues, because we've got to come to the table with that as in-kind match oftentimes. So there's an amount in there, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's one of the things that they had us cut back to receive the award.
It's unfortunate because I'm asking for an obvious reason. We need some revenue from grants to assist on our budget.
Nancy, I know you have.
Yeah, we might think we're doing this for Project Clarity or Watershed or whatever, but we're really building an agricultural culture here. And when you get everybody together like that and they are with each other and, you know, you just build a team spirit and it just does a whole lot for the community in ways we can never measure. But having 130 people show up out of their regular little, you know, silo busy schedule says a lot about our whole region and what you're doing to help everybody accept common values for the whole region. So I don't know if it'll ever show up on a chart or a graph or little numbers or whatever, but that's a deep and wide investment in the culture. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I should mention, we did partner with Allegan and Ottawa Conservation Districts, which was part of the reason we could bring some of these people together. But we did, even when looking at some of our local watershed farmers, we had other people attending. So typically we kind of get the same core group. And we had more growers from our area show up that we haven't seen at these meetings before. So that was a big step in the right direction for us.
I mean, you may even help people stay in agriculture because they have a place to belong. So that's a huge investment for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. Tim, looks like you have some items. You have to clear off your calendar there.
Yes. Number of housekeeping items today, and I'll try to run through them pretty quickly. Hopefully you had a chance to look in your packet, but there's two budget-related items that we're asking your approval on. One is with the current fiscal year budget of 2019, which this is our last meeting because the fiscal year starts October 1. We need to do a budget amendment, and this is something that happens every year as far as reconciling any over expenditures that we may have. One of the big highlights, though, of course, is if you just jump to the bottom line, we started the year with an anticipated budget deficit of $44,000, and we'll end in the positive. Probably $4,000 is conservative. It should be greater than that, but you know, there's some expenditures that will still be coming in over the next few weeks, and so we tried to cushion those line items as needed. So need your approval on that budget amendment. That was the first item in that budget memo. The second budget-related action item that I'm asking for is for the fiscal year 2020 budget. And this comes to us from our finance manager, Chris Brown. He said, you know, it'd be awfully nice if the policy board would approve this on a functional basis, analyzed for aggregate expenses. And the best way for me to explain that to you is if there's one line item in our budget for postage, and we went over it by $200 this year. If that were the only thing that we went over, we would still have to come to you and do a formal budget amendment. But if you do it on this basis, we're just looking at the totals under transportation, under watershed, and under indirect. And as long as we don't exceed what those budgeted expenditures are, we won't have any flags in the audit process. You would still get the same budget reports that you do today, so you could see exactly where everything is at and question anything, but it just saves a step going forward. So the other reason to reapprove the fiscal year 20 budget is we incorporated the Great Lakes Commission grant that Rob just mentioned, which is going to be spent over a 3-year period. But in 2020, anticipating an increase in income of $62,170. But again, a lot of that is going to go right back out in the form of expenditures on cover crops and other best management practices in the amount of $52,500. Those two line items are highlighted in yellow in that budget, but those are the two action items that I'm requesting. Any questions on those?
Looking for a motion, David, on the...
I am.
And if I could just say, Chris, our finance manager, asked if these could be separate motion items. So doing the fiscal year 19 budget amendment 1 as one, and then reapprove the fiscal year 2020.
We amend fiscal year 2019 budget is proposed in amendment number 1.
There's questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, second is to reapprove the 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Any further questions?
May I speak to it?
You certainly may.
As the appointed treasurer, I will give my endorsement to the motion. It makes eminent sense from an accounting standpoint. but also we will still be getting the detail that many of you may relish analyzing month by month to see the detail. So I think in fulfilling our fiduciary responsibility, we will still have the controls available to do that.
Well stated, thank you. It was important that be clarified. Thank you, Tom. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
All right. The next item deals with the employee handbook, and I really had wanted something more riveting and compelling to be my last presentation to you, something other than the employee handbook, but I'm going to do my best to sell this and go out on a bang. But really, this is an important document. When I came here, it was made clear to me by a few folks that it was in desperate need of updating, and so that's what's before you today. We sent it out electronically. Hopefully, you had a chance to digest it. But just running through some things, looked at a lot of examples. Our partner agencies in Grand Rapids and Muskegon. Park Township was kind enough to lend us theirs. And by the way, Jerry went above and beyond, providing multiple review rounds, so really appreciate his input. Looked at the community I came from, and then also BHS, our insurance provider, did a very comprehensive review. So we got a lot of good feedback. They gave us 7 pages of checklists to bring us into proper compliance. So utilize that. Some of the key things we went through, the dress code ruled out bell bottoms before. That's no longer mentioned. Kind of like, I think we were letting it hang around long enough to where they're now back in style or coming. And then MS4, this is not what you think it is. We have a MACC salary scale and salary schedule staff system, whatever it is, you'll see. Kelly does not like that I did that, so this is just one more little fun thing that I put in there, but we'll show you that here in a second. So like I said, pages of review comments from BHS. Not going to read those, of course, but just to show you that we had a lot of good input. Staff scale and salary schedule, those were the 4 S's. So this was something that was brought to me some time ago, that there's not a lot of transparency in terms of the structure and the pay scale of the MACC and the positions that we have. And so David was very helpful, as well as the executive committee, at reviewing this and helping come up with it. But one of the things that are mentioned, the scale itself is not in the document, but talks about that we will look at the consumer price index for the Midwest region and any other factors as needed to make recommendations on inflationary adjustments. And that's something the executive committee will do. That'll be under their purview. And then as far as the review process, the executive director may grant either a partial or full step increase on the scale, or on the schedule rather. Any increase beyond a single step would require require an approval from the executive committee. So that was one big change that's in the new proposed document. Our health plan is very good. We actually made this change over the past year and into a different high deductible health plan. But with the savings that we were able to realize from that, we were able to give some, I think, pretty generous but appropriate HSA, health savings account contributions. So you see the breakdown there of $2,500 up to $4,500. Those come in 2 distributions, in November and in May. And then there's a payment in lieu of health insurance option of 50% of the single employee cost, but you have to prove, coverage if you're going to decline it and take that. So that was a big change. We have a dental set-aside program currently that's it's for up to $800 per fiscal year. I know from experience you burn through that very fast. So I proposed a change of keeping it at $800 for single, but $1,200 per plus family. That doesn't really make a big increase in terms of the small staff that we have. It's about a $2,000 potential budget impact, but worked with our finance manager and he felt we could easily absorb that. And then I think this is the last slide I have on this. Our PTO system, paid time off. Right now the MACC has vacation, sick, personal days. Proposing to switch that to a system, and went through a lot of iterations of comparing what other folks are doing and came up with this option. of, after year 1, 4, 7, and 10, the number of PTO days you see on the far right. The big thing to note in here is implementing a max carryover of 30 days. That's something that the auditors have brought to us year after year in terms of the audit process. Did put in there a little bit of a grace period, though, about implementing that in 2 years. That's just to accommodate a transition period for some of the staff that have built up quite a few hours. But the maximum liability the MACC would carry is 30 days disbursement upon end of employment. Any questions on the handbook?
And the wages, those are effective the beginning of each fiscal year changes?
Yes, so we were going to make that change too, to keep it in line with the turn of the fiscal year.
Stated in, I didn't look at the latest copy. Is that stated in the handbook?
If not, we could certainly amend it to do so. But that was part of the discussion. Yeah, the idea was to align that.
Right, Dave?
Yes, that there would be a recommendation August 1 of each year on the inflationary.
And the only reason I raised that, because that's not been the past practice.
Correct, that's correct. Now it's aligned with the fiscal year, correct. Thank you, Jerry, by the way. So if there are no questions, you're looking for a motion on that?
Yes, this is very much a policy document and would like your approval.
I move that we adopt the policy manual as presented. Excellent work, by the way, Tim.
Thank you.
Further questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That was good work, Tim. I must say, for an engineer, you did good work on personnel.
It showed me I don't want to be a HR director. There are just a couple other items under administrative issues. You have a new fiscal year 20 calendar in your packet. The only change from last month was the January meeting. Based on Kevin's comments, we slid that to January 6th, which is the first Monday in January, but that's combined between December and January. Then you also have the financial report. Revenues 80.3%, expenses 70.5%. And then the executive committee report is in your packet as well. Two announcements I was going to make with that. Our bylaws state that the executive committee will be elected every October. And I checked with the current members, who've been great for me to work with, by the way. I think it's been a good group, a good year. All have expressed a willingness and interest to stay in that capacity, but that'll come to you next month as an action item. But if you have any thoughts or comments on that, I would suggest reaching out to David. And then the other note to mention is we were originally planning on a strategic planning session next month, but given some transitional issues, the executive committee decided to postpone that until further notice. So don't plan on that. The next meeting will just be a standard meeting held at Park Township.
Yes.
Is there anything in the handbook about especially gifted executive directors can't leave within the first decade? Or did that get skipped?
We missed that part.
Oh, too bad.
Fortunately, I don't think I meet that qualification, so that I'd be exempt. But
No. Pass a Kleenex.
All right, we're moving into G. Before I start G, I will just say that this has been difficult for Tim. He is a man with a lot of character, and I know he's had a lot of sleepless nights about this, but I will say this, Tim. Congratulations, you have an opportunity that I think can make a big difference for Grand Rapids. Their gain is our loss. In a year, you have become a friend, and you have become a part of Ottawa County. You've immersed yourself into Ottawa County. We're going to miss that a lot. We'll have to figure out how we replace it, but we will miss you a lot. I'll say that.
Thank you, and thank you all. This was not an easy decision. I mean, obviously, I'm excited by the opportunity, but very, very saddened to leave here so soon. And hopefully, you sensed that from the email that I sent. A lot of thought and prayer went into this decision, but I want to just thank you on behalf of my family for bringing me here to West Michigan. I mean, you guys opened the door for me to walk through, and were it not for that, we wouldn't, of course, be here. And so, very appreciative of my time at the MACC. My only regret is that it was so short. And but thank you. I've learned a great deal from all of you, and wholeheartedly mean it when I said it in the email. I tell people all the time that I have the privilege of working with some incredible leaders. And this area, this region is so special because of what each of you do. So thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
I was never so sad to get an email. I mean that sincerely. We worked long and hard to find, I think, the right person. Just really looking forward to the strategic planning meeting because I think that we need to do that. I agree with the executive committee's recommendation for component. And I wish you the absolute best, Tim. I mean that sincerely. And second comments made by Dave, I consider you a friend. I challenge the executive committee to go find another Tim Burton.
Impossible.
Yes, sir.
I just want to add to the record that Tim has also been a great friend to Allegan County. And in fact, the very first meeting that he attended of this committee was in Fillmore Township. And he's paid, but seriously, he's paid a lot of attention, even though we're a smaller part of the overall region. He's paid a lot of attention to our activities, attending things like the M89 and M40 Corridor Improvement Committee, which gave it some great attention, producing some special reports for that. Certainly the agricultural outreach has been wonderful, and so we also will miss him mightily and wish him the best in Grand Rapids. He may want to consider, influencing some road funding policies if some of that city money comes this way, but that's, but seriously, I wish you well.
All right. There are three components to G, and I don't want to assume that they have to be connected. They can be as a motion, and I don't want to assume that you are in agreement with any of those. It showed up in the paper that number 2 seemed to be done. That's not true, so I don't want you guys to feel like that's something you have to do. So, that being said, we can take these one at a time, or if there's a motion to, no, I should clarify something. We do have the executive committee, and the feeling I had about the executive committee, thanks to Jerry, is that it might be the perfect vehicle for the search committee. I don't want to assume that's what everyone wants, but that was the feeling of the executive committee, as we would use them as a search committee. I have made a contact with Jake at Ottawa County, who has assisted us in the last search that brought you here. He did a wonderful job, by the way, just terrific. Jerry led that search process. And Jake had to check with the powers that be, with Al and with Marcy, to determine if that was okay. But if that is okay, I'm going to recommend that we use Ottawa County in a very similar process. And so that's where I would leave it to you to decide how you want to handle that. So.
Well, first you need a motion to accept Tim's resignation.
Yeah, if we take one at a time, this would be the first one.
I'd reluctantly make that motion. I told him before the meeting that the best solution here is for this board to turn it down, but I just can't do that. So I make a motion, we accept Tim Bertman's resignation as executive director effective October 21st and wish him well.
Jerry, could you add with regrets? Accept the resignation with regrets?
Yes, sir. Second? I'm not sure who won there, but, all right, Jim done. All right. All's in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, first one's done. The second one, and I don't know how much this would be in use. It depends upon how we move along the process, but I would be willing to step in, assuming that there is a gap. I don't know that that would be a lot of time, but so I'll just leave it right there. So.
And if I may just add there, that was something that I had asked David and suggested to the executive committee, because we have an exceptional team, and I failed to mention that again. I should acknowledge that, and most things will just continue to run whether I'm there or not. But for the occasional item where it's nice to have somebody to make those decisions and act as that person I can think of no one better than David to step into that role and act as that interim person. And so just hope it's not too bold of me to add that, but I wanted to mention that.
All right. Well, I'll make that motion that we approve David as the interim, is that what we're dealing with here in the interim?
I think that's as good as any, yeah. And again, I don't think this is going to be long. It just depends upon how long the search process takes, so. Yeah. All right. Any questions?
I'd say we were fortunate to get you for that hourly rate, because I think it's well below your normal, but thank you for doing it.
Not happy to do it. And hopefully won't have to do it long, so. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And the third one is to have the executive committee act as a search committee. Again, this is up to you as members, so. And if there are volunteers who would like to be a part of that, I think that certainly is welcome as well, so. I will take a motion then.
So moved.
Nancy? Ken? Okay, before we take that, I will say this. If any of you have any thoughts about any aspect of that search process, please send me an email. I would be happy to hear those. Our goal will be to make sure that every member is communicated so we know how we're all moving at the same time. Same thing for the staff. We will try and make sure that we communicate as openly as we can to make sure that we're all cognizant of the process. First thing we have to do is figure out whether the county will help us. So that would be the next thing. So, and I'll work closely with the executive committee. So, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Howard, thank you for hosting.
All right, well, thanks for coming out. Welcome to Port Sheldon Township. I just have a few items, and I'll keep it brief. We've got a couple of new developments going. They're in the northeast area of our township. One of them is phase 2 of a 75 home development. Phase 1 is just about filled up. And another one is a 50 home development. These are both single family homes. They're in the corner of our township where we do have water and sewer, so that's where any more dense development has to take place. The Road Commission resurfaced Lakeshore Drive in our township this summer from Croswell to Fillmore Street. And they also did the Cape Seal procedure on New Holland Street, about 3.5 miles from Lakeshore to 144th. So it's a couple of nice road projects that were done. We did a complete rewrite of our zoning ordinance, and we're looking to adopt that on October 10, this coming month's board meeting. And I had mentioned before, one of our Lake Michigan parks, Winds Nest Park behind Consumers Energy. That project is 95% complete. Check it out. It's open to the public. Finishing up a boardwalk, but we had to keep revising that design due to the high water levels in Lake Michigan. So that's all I have. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Howard. Any other member comments? We're not saying goodbye quite yet because Tim wanted to, in fact, he negotiated to stay here for another month. We're happy that he will do that, so he will be with us roughly for about 4 weeks. Roughly 4 weeks, so I won't quite say goodbye yet. We do have a MACC holding meeting. Our next meeting is October 28th, Park Township. Thank you, Jerry. Howard, instructions on the MACC?
Yes, we have a room right by the AED on the wall there. Take the door to the left to the board meeting room. We can meet there. I don't have a whole lot set up. I think it's going to be a brief meeting, isn't it?
It should be 5 minutes unless there's any hard-hitting questions. So maybe even shorter than that. We'll see.
Motion to adjourn? Support?
Yeah.
We're adjourned. Thank you.